So, um, when I was struggling to write this because it's literally the most vulnerable thing that I've ever written in my entire life, and it's harder than you would think to admit your feelings and thoughts and doubts that you have. And I honestly I went through why I agreed to do this, and I couldn't find a reason. But I guess I was just kind of hoping that I would use this for, to show somebody something that maybe they hadn't thought of before. So, anyways, so I grew up in church. That's my mom and my sister and my brother. And I was saved when I was in first grade. So I had heard stories about Jesus. I heard people pray, say that he was their best friend, and I was a first grader, and I didn't really know what that meant, and oh, that's just something people say when they're Christian. So I guess I was going through the motions, like people say. So about a year after I was saved, then I was diagnosed with scoliosis, which, if you don't know, it is a curvature of the spine. So my spine looks like an S, and there's kind of not much that you can do about it besides surgery. So I didn't even know that was a second grader, but the next thing I knew, I was having an MRI, and I ended up with a back brace, checkups and x-rays every 36 months. And I think that was the time, the first time that my faith really started to grow, because my mom, she showed me Jeremiah 29:11, which is, "For I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future." And I just remember hearing that verse for the first time, and sorry, I said I was going to cry. And I just remember that verse, sorry. I remember when I was in my MRI, I just kept saying that verse over and over in my head. And I said I was going to cry. And every time I get stressed out or something, then I just say that, or if I don't know what's going to happen, if I have something good coming up, then I just keep saying that verse. And that is the reason that I think that I have such strong faith now, because within circumstances, of course I have doubts and anxiety and stuff, but ever since that, she drilled it into my brain that God's got it, he's got me, there's no reason that I really have to worry about it. And at that time I didn't really know much about God, but I knew that he was my foundation, and we sang Cornerstone today at church, and I thought that was just so great because I kept thinking of him as my cornerstone. So after my MRI and I got my first back brace, then I ended up switching to a Christian specialist who was able to give us some great insight and perspective, both spiritual and for physical, for my back. And then as time went on, I was learning about God and Jesus and the Bible from both church and my family. But I had what most people have, a stop and start relationship with God, where you would leave him at church and go about your life until Sunday. And but for me, it was kind of leaving him at church, leaving my Bible, leaving him in my room, leaving him in the bathroom where I would just pray, I guess. But even though my relationship with God wasn't the greatest, I could still recognize everything that he had done for me. I really wanted to share it with people, so I just started inviting people to church, and Tommy was one of those people that I invited. And then my best friend Sophie, she was somebody that I invited, and I'll talk about that later. So in 7th grade, jump way ahead to 7th grade, I had a friend that was struggling with a lot of things, and I kind of became her therapist. So I took it all on myself, which I thought was the selfless thing to do. Oh, I'm being like Jesus. She's telling me all her problems, and I'm giving her advice and stuff. But it actually did more harm than good, because after it was all over, I realized that I was trying to pour into her life, her spiritual life, when I wasn't pouring into my own. and it was like leaving me as the most insecure and anxiety-ridden person that I've ever been in my entire life. And that summer after that was Journey Camp, the first camp that I'd ever been to. And that was where I learned what real worship was. I learned how to pour into my spiritual life. And I learned the real value of just spending time with God, just hanging out with Him. And then in 8th grade, I kept growing in my faith, and 3 major things happened. 1, I was elected to be the president of our student government, and 2, my scoliosis got worse. So I had to get my 3rd back brace, but this one was 21 hours instead of just the night brace that I had to wear before. So that means at school, I had to wear it at school. And a lot of people didn't know that I had scoliosis, so that was interesting. That was the true test of my confidence, and strangely enough, I became more confident in myself and more confident in God through that experience. I wasn't confident in myself in the beginning, whatsoever, but then as time went on, I learned a lot of things, and so those 2 things, the being president of the school and having a back brace, which nobody else had, gave me this incredible platform to share Christ and to just talk about Him. I put Him in my election speech. I put Him in my closing speech at the end of at the beginning of this year for the next election, and then I just kind of talked about God the whole year, and people listened. So that was I'm still in awe of how God orchestrated those 2 things to happen at the same time. So that's kind of just who He is. And the 3rd major event was that Sophie came to, a lot of you know Sophie, she came to the fall retreat at Caswell last year, and I do believe that there she accepted Christ, so that was a huge thing to begin with, but it was even a bigger deal for me because we've been best friends since kindergarten, and ever since then, I have been sharing bits and pieces of the gospel, and then I've just been sharing the love of Christ with her because her family are not Christians. And so at the end of the year, well, I guess beginning of the year, then I was this sounds terrible, but I kind of just wanted to give up and say because we were going to be going to different schools, I want to see her every day. So I was you know what, I planted seeds, God's going to do whatever He wants with them, but that was my time with her, and that was my time to share with her, and then but I didn't, and I kept going, and I kept inviting her to church, and then I invited her to the retreat, and she ended up being able to come, and so that was a huge lesson, and a reminder that one person's soul is worth 9 long years of prayer from my entire family, and I'm very, very thankful to them for doing that. And that brings me to right now. I'm currently a freshman at Coastal Christian High School. I am learning about the government and parts of ecosystems, but I'm also learning how to pray and how to use my gifts of art and music to bring glory to the God that gave them to me by drawing and painting His creation and leading worship both at youth group and in my school worship band. I am also in a difficult part of my life at the same time because I thought it was very odd that Pastor John asked me to share my testimony last week because I'm in the middle of this super hard time for me. And I was so shocked that I was actually tempted to say no because I just didn't know what on earth I was going to talk about. But one reason I didn't want to do it was because I had just left the school that I had been going to for my entire life, and I just left all the closest friends that I'd ever had. And I am all of a sudden put into this place that I have to go to for the next 4 years, where I knew a grand total of 4 people in my grade. And I am making friends, and I do have fun with them. We joke about ASMR and stuff at the lunch table. But I still feel very lonely. Like that's one of the main feelings that I feel at school. And it's very hard for me because I am an extrovert and I love like making like new friends and getting close with them. But it makes me feel very unworthy of friends, and if I have a bad day, then honestly I can get kind of angry at God. Like, why would you put me here? Like, why couldn't you have like closed this door for me so that it wouldn't even be an option? But on Tuesday, actually last Tuesday, I was reading an old blog, and it talked about Luke 12:27 through 28. And I'll read that in a second. You guys have most likely read this. 28. If that is how God clothes, consider how the wildflowers grow. They do not labor or spin or thread. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was adorned like one of these. If that's how God clothes the grass, which is in the field today and is thrown into the furnace tomorrow, how much more will He do for you, O you of little faith? And I always thought of that as like, don't worry, like God will take care of you and stuff. But as I read the blog, like I thought that was all it kind of meant. But then as I kept reading the blog, I realized that the two verses held so much more meaning than what I had originally thought. And it says, the flowers neither toil nor spin, yet God takes care of them. And it finally like dawned on me, like God, like how much I work, or how many friends that I have, or how close I am with those friends, or like how often I pray, like that doesn't define my worth. Like God will still take care of me no matter how I am doing with any of those things. He takes care of us because He loves us, and He loves us because He loves us, and He loves us because He loves us. So it's not anything that I have to do, because I guess I kind of worried about that a lot. And even though I have been reminded of like what defines my worth, or who defines my worth, the hurt and that loneliness is still there. But the difference now is that I'm learning how to praise Him in the middle of every single difficult season that I am put in, because I know that He will take care of me,